Vladimir Putin has claimed a landslide victory in the Russian presidential election, securing a fifth term with more than 87% of the vote, according to the country's electoral commission. It means the Russian president will serve another six-year term until 2030, but Western countries have condemned the vote, saying they were neither free nor fair and that no credible opposition candidate was allowed to stand. The UK's Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has gone as far as to call Vladimir Putin a tyrant and describe him as a modern-day Joseph Stalin, the former leader of the old Soviet Union. Putin has dismissed criticism of the election, saying the vote showed the Russian people have trust and hope in him. He's also warned that any conflict between Moscow and NATO, the Western military alliance, would be one step away from full-scale Third World War. Well, joining me now in the studio is the defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Thank you, Robert, for coming. Joined also by Scott Lucas, the Professor of International Politics at University College Dublin's Clinton Institute. Why don't we start with you, Robert? Vladimir Putin, obviously in triumphal form and also bellicose and threatening form.
But what a surprise. Yes, he was going to be bellicose and threatening because he is committed to the special military operation, now no longer called that, generally accepted as being a war. I mean, it's very interesting to watch the nuances of how he conceives the confrontation with the West. Is he really looking for an excuse to have a real fight with the Western alliance? I think the jury's out on that. But I do think that this is a preliminary to something more, probably a big call out. He needs to raise another 500,000 fighting personnel for the front lines, plural, all over the place, including adventures in Africa. And I think that he will start the offensive quite soon, the Russian summer offensive. And it now is looking as if it won't come along the main front line where they've been grinding away for 18 months now in dreadful fashion. I mean, where if you wanted to see the failure of Soviet military doctrine, which is what they're both really working to, it was there too many tanks, too many bodies, too many people, and not much moving. Two really rather small towns, Avdiivka and Bakhmut. That's not a great triumph, but I really fear a big attack on Odessa now to really reduce it, to take it off the board, which is very worrying indeed.
And just explain a couple of things. First of all, when you talked about Africa, what do you mean? Because people might not be familiar with what's going on there.
There have been a lot of Russian adventures, more or less successful, particularly with the old Wagner company, the Wagner Group. The Wagner Group is now called the Expeditionary Corps. It has more money. It is more obviously directly under the Russian Ministry of Defense and associated agencies. And it's being, for a relatively modest deployment of numbers, it's been very successful in places like Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali, where they are scooping up lithium, very, very important element, mineral, and gold mine. But the thing that we're not watching is that they're moving, consolidating in the Eastern Mediterranean. I think you and I discussed it. They've taken over, they've got a license for the Libyan port of Benghazi, which so that they can squeeze the opening to the Suez Canal, because they've got a base, a recruiting station in Tartus on the Syrian coast. And we're seeing, I think we're seeing, yes, what we got from the rhetoric at Red Square today, yes, we are bellicose Putin and we're expansionist Putin. This is Russia's destiny to be an expansionist power because we have been deprived of our rightful place by the West.
And very briefly, Odessa, apart from if you're a resident of Odessa, when it would be unbelievably appalling were Putin to raise it to the ground or conquer it in some ghastly, all-encompassing kind of a way. But why did you say it's so worrying?
It is absolutely vital because it's the vital outlet. It's the hub with Mykolaiv to the Black Sea. And it's, Ukraine has been managing to amazingly increase its exports, and the grain corridor, as it's called, which comes down that side of the Black Sea, which Russia hasn't been able to dominate, through the Bosphorus, that has been going quite successful, although there have been many or several Russian attempts to thwart it. It's a big game that's going on at the moment, and dear old UK PLC, as it used to be called, I think is not really ready for it, but it is a key part of the European alliance I know we're going to discuss it in view of what is going on in America.
All right, we're going to get to America in a minute. But first of all, I'd love Scott Lucas's take on Putin's, in inverted commas, or non-victory. I mean, you know, he's certainly achieved victory. How he did it is another question. But do you agree with the analysis that we've just heard, or do you have a different view, Scott?
I mean, that's an excellent analysis by Robert Fox, but I do have a different emphasis here, and that is I don't think Putin's main push will be a military push soon. As Robert pointed out, Russia is not, contrary to some misguided media narratives, winning on the battlefield. They've only gained 2 towns and cities since July 2022, both in eastern Ukraine. Ukraine is hitting Russia hard behind the front lines. Within the past week, they've hit 6 oil refineries alone. Ukraine has badly damaged Russia's navy, which would be an important part of making that drive on Odessa. They've broken Russia's grip on the Black Sea, Western Black Sea, by sinking warships, by hitting port facilities. Putin, in other words, is not really, he doesn't have a strong hand militarily. What I think we're seeing instead is propaganda warfare. And that's propaganda warfare to do 2 things with this orchestrated election. Putin, on the one hand, is playing propaganda warfare with his own public, a lot of whom won't believe that 87%, but it will be, love me as your leader if you know what's good for you. And secondly, and equally important, he's playing propaganda warfare with the international community, which is, on the one hand, he's playing the bully, which is, you know what, if you keep supporting Ukraine, I will thump you. I will thump you with weapons, big weapons. And on the other hand, he's playing the victim, playing to that certain section of opinion, including in the UK, which says, oh, I'm the victim of NATO, I'm the victim of the US, I'm the victim of Europe, poor me, I'm the victim. You really should stop supporting Kyiv because I'm the victim of my own invasion of February 2022.
Robert?
I absolutely agree with you, Scott, on this, because the card always is the victim aggressor, isn't it? And he's got the victim line again. Look, Russia should be doing this. It should be allowed to do the other. Look, we're blocked in. I think he's going to make, in propaganda, we've heard about it following your argument, which I absolutely, you know, I support the general line of your thing. And we ought to talk about his military limitation. And I think it's in human power. And despite the enormous expenditure on arms and armament, basically, most of them are not terribly good.